Got ahead. Mm.
All right. So I am so happy that we get to chat here. And I was just like, you know what, this is just like girl talk, like women talking among women. But you know what? Um, it's always like some women will like I'm at a coffee table and I'm kind of just listening. They're talking about stuff and they're talking about hormones and oh my gosh, I'm feeling this way. Sometimes I just want to go sit with them and have a conversation and educate them. Don't you all feel that sometimes
Help
when
them.
women are
Help
talking about that?
them.
Oh, absolutely.
No, it's
That's
like we're eavesdropping, but we're not. They're talking loud enough that everybody could hear.
it's funny because a lot of my patients, that's kind of what happens with them. It's kind of like they end up, chatting with the girls, and of course, everybody's kind of like complain, and go like, okay, well, you know something, you can do something about this. And so a lot of times we get people getting referred to us, or people just taking the opportunity to educate their sister friend,
Mhm.
just to say, hey, listen, you don't need to be suffering. Why don't you consider, getting some evaluation, talk to someone who's an expert to see whether or not you might be able to get some help, and you don't have to live, the rest of your life suffering with all of these things that you're, concerned about and complaining about, so.
Yeah. So, Dr. Leah, tell me a little bit about your background, who you are, your background, and you're a superstar and what you do.
Superstar. So I'm actually just practicing GYN right now. Of course, my board certified with OB-GYN. I've been practicing, gosh, this year will be 34 years, and I kind of did multi-specialty for a while, did some teaching for a while. And so back after 25 years of practicing, which was in 2015, I decided that I needed to do me. I needed to practice the way I felt comfortable practicing, and, giving people the time that they needed to have longer conversations and have someone listen to them and be focused on the whole them. And so that's when I started Nurturing You, Women's Health and Wellness. So again, it's been since June. Actually, gosh, next week will be like a what, 9 years, 9 years, so 2015. So, but I did do my training in New York. I did, Cornell Med, and then came out to California at that time. I did training at USC, LA County. And then after that, like I said, in 1990, that's when I started my multi-specialty practice with the full scope OBGYN. But I love where my practice is focused right now. Yes, we do general GYN, but I'm very, very, very passionate about helping women that are dealing with that perimenopause, menopause phase of their life, and helping them to understand, as I said before, that there are things that can be done. I like to express the benefits of whether it's natural, replacement, or lifestyle changes, or a combination of all of those, and hormone replacement, just kind of seeing where they are and what fits best with them.
Mhm.
I try to give people the opportunity to learn about the options that's available for them, and then we work together. I always consider myself to be a partner with our patients, and working together to help them to be the best them, and to live lives of vitality and strength, and just being the best them,
Yeah.
for the rest of their life. So
Yeah, we need more MDs like you. And then Dr. Lucinda, tell me a little bit about you and for people listening.
Sure. I have a huge background in women's health, graduated from Bastyr University in 94. And I started out the gate helping women. So I also have a little background. I don't think you even know this. I was doing some midwifery, naturopathic midwifery for a while. And I decided, oh, I need my sleep and I need to eat and exercise. So I actually got a little bit more training in women's health because of that. But it's always been, and I have a diplomat in women's health. I also have a diplomat in anti-aging medicine from the A4M
awesome.
back in from 2010. So I've been doing it for a long time, even 95, 96.
Mhm.
So lots of extreme experience from doing that. Of course, my background's bioidenticals. My work has been just bioidenticals, and helping women, definitely premenopausal, and premenopause
Yeah.
starts at 34, 35. So, and then of course helping young girls with their extreme PMS. That's, oh my Lord. That's hard. I have that trial by fire, lots of premenopause, menopause, perimenopause, post-menopause,
Yeah.
and I've been through it all and I probably helped thousands of women.
Mhm.
And you know what? They're my teachers. They've been my teachers, because without that, them coming in and telling me what works or what doesn't work,
Right.
wow, I would be nowhere. I mean, it's just like everybody's our teacher anyway, but my patients, my women patients have taught me an incredible amount. And
Mhm.
so I'm really grateful. And where I'm at now is I'm kind of like you. I'm living my best life. Just I don't see when I was in Seattle, I saw, oh my Lord, you know, 15, 20 patients a day. And now it's far less, and it's more concierge, and they call me when they have this or that. And you know, women always have hormonal issues, so I really enjoy it now. It's more interesting, and now I'm in more into anti-aging, do a lot of peptides to support them, and work with weight loss and all that. So
Yeah.
I like the variability. I like the whole
Yeah.
list. I like that I have a lot of time to, you know, support
Yeah.
all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I,
it's mostly like our focus is on women, and that's what, and I think we don't get a lot of that. And like both of you, I can't prescribe. So I was talking to Dr. Lucinda before you hopped on, Dr. Lita, that I'm like, I'm the one that tells them we got to get the foundation ready. It's like, or sometimes we got to tear the house down. I said, in the hormones, I said, those are all the decorations. I
right.
said, and you want the house to look amazing, or it's like the car. I said, I help you, I teach you what you need to do. We wash the car, but the hormones, that's the wax on the car if you want it to look beautiful. And so, my training is in chiropractic and functional medicine over 20 some years. Um, we started with a lot of, I got picked up by a company to go do speaking gigs all on women's health, for a nutrition company. And you know what was interesting? One of the things that one of the practitioners, and it's interesting that she was an ND, that she had prepared a slide, and I looked at the PowerPoint, kind of followed some of the stuff and showed that. But I don't even think she really knew a whole lot about the benefits of hormone replacement.
Mm.
He had very negative connotation towards the Women's Health Initiative. So I just thought, I think women need to wake up to that. And as both you were saying, we need a team.
Yeah.
A team, and we need to support one another. And it's not about just, you just go see your doctor when you have a problem. It's like prevention is everything, preventive medicine instead of reactive medicine. So I'd like to ask you all, when you talk to your patients, and I mean, hormones, the people, when you think hormones, they're like, oh, their hormones are raging. They always think of like a teenager, or they take of someone young, but how do you explain, would like to see how you all explain it to your patients, like, well, what exactly is a hormone? And in a way that's so very basic that your patient understands it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just, hormones, chemical structures that send signals. I mean, it's part of the endocrine system, we put it that way. So, which is huge. And a lot of times when people are communicating about their hormones, they're really talking about, and I hate to say sex hormones, but that's what they're talking about. The hormones emerge from the ovarian production. But as we know, there's adrenal hormones, there's cortisol, there's insulin, there's so many other hormones. But I think when most people just kind of say, hey, my hormone, they're talking about the hormones that fluctuate during their menstrual cycle, and the ones that kind of change as they go through the different phases of their menstrual cycle, and then going into, like Dr. Lucinda was saying, like their premenopause, the perimenopause, all of those. They're talking about the estrogen, the progesterone, the testosterone, but some people don't realize even DHEA, from the adrenal glands. Thyroid is a hormone, when they start noticing a lot of changes with their weight that can happen. insulin, cortisol, there's not sleeping well. So there's so many hormones that's sending signals to each other that make something happen. There's glands in our endocrine system. So it's like sending signal to let those glands maybe secrete another chemical. And there's so many feedback loops. I don't tell them that part, but I guess sometimes I start talking and I get excited. I keep going. So, I'm just like, So, but just, I just tell them it's like the different chemicals that's in their body that are secreted that help to support their function, their body functions there. And if they're talking about their sex hormones, their ovarian function is there, a lot of other things. But, I don't try to get too big, too complex, but it depends on the person, because we do see a lot, I think all of us see patients who they spend time, they study, they educate themselves, they research. So, you want to meet the person where they are, if I could put it that way, educate, but meet them where they are, so I can talk a lot to someone who, when I kind of start dropping, they're like, oh yeah, well, I want, we can talk about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Dr. Lucinda, when you try to like, because you see I mean, we were all talking, it's just like we see a lot of people even in the health field and they really don't know a whole lot. So how do you kind of, even though before, what about the just basic person that's just like, doc, I know something's wrong and I just don't know. If somebody tells me it's my hormones, what do you explain?
What I really try to explain is the difference between endogenous hormones and exogenous hormones. People, and they don't even know what that means. So I have to say, the
Right.
ones that your body makes,
Right.
the ones that you get from a lab or you get outside yourself. And I try to explain that because, of course, they're coming to have me give them a hormone or balance a hormone. So, you have to kind of educate them in as far as, okay, your hormone milieu, you have your own receptor sites in your body that are bioidentical, that are biologically akin to your own hormones. So if you have a receptor for your thyroid and you take a synthetic thyroid, do you think that synthetic thyroid is going to fit inside that receptor? No, it will not. Do you think that if you take a synthetic estrogen or progestin, do you think that'll fit into your own receptor? No. So I that's how I like to explain to them and educate them. It's really important because then they're like, oh, I get it. I get that you want that. So and then you explain, well, I mean, it really depends on them. If they come in for PMS, you explain their bodies, not able to conjugate. They have an overload of hormones. We have to detoxify that. So I usually end up explaining to them how their liver has to detoxify certain hormones. And one of the reasons why their hormones aren't working is because their whole, their flight or fight, their cortisol, their stress is out of control. Stress, I tell them, controls your limbic center in your brain. And our limbic centers are 150% larger than a male's, and it's all related to stress. So if you have stress for too long, your periods, if they're menstruating females, will be extra long, extra heavy, or they'll just stop. So that's how important the limbic center plays a part of our hormones. So I kind of give them these kind of stories and they kind of get it about hormones that way. But otherwise it's a case by case.
Yeah. Yeah. And I simplify a lot of things and I always try to remember, having kids, they would go to my workshops and they understood it because I had to just just simple. I'm like, hey, they're just chemical messengers. They're the language, it's the communication language of your body. They talk to this, hey, you got to make more of this, hey, you got to slow down. I said, I keep it real basic to them. I said, and your body, I always feel like your body it's like a natural pharmacy. And sometimes I said the pharmacy's not open because you have too much of the stuff from the outside, which is all the processed food and our lifestyle that interferes with that. So a lot of times I keep that really basic with a lot of patients. Now, talking about, I love working with women. And I always say, and no disrespect to male practitioners, but I always say, I said this earlier and I said, you know, I don't have a penis. I don't know what it's like to not be able to, you know, have an erection. A man, he doesn't know what it's like to live in a female's body, what it's like to have a baby, what it's like to have PMS, what it's like to be bloating, be bloated, because a lot of women, when they go through that perimenopause, they're no longer the same person that they were like in their 30s. It's just like they start getting bloated. They don't want to have sex anymore, you know. It's just like, don't look at me. And their moods change and everything, you know. And so then the men, they don't get women during that time. And I really believe that there's a lot of divorces that probably happen as a result. Would you all agree? Like a woman going through that change of life and their hormones fluctuating and not getting the right information?
No, I agree. You know, unfortunately, you know, and it all depends on the level of comfort that someone has and just evaluating and seeking like what's going wrong with me or what is not right with me. But I also, as you shared, I also look at the health industry. Sometimes I don't like to say healthcare because sometimes I feel like there's a significant lack as far as care is concerned, but the health industry or the whatever industry you want to call it, because someone may come to someone, but if they don't go to the right person to express their concerns, they just get this, you know, they get the pat on the hand, you know, this, hey, well, that's just what happens when you get older. You know, I've had patients come to my office crying and saying as someone, I mean, I sometimes I feel like I'm a therapist, but you know, I'm crying and you know somebody just told them, well, that's just part of getting older, you know, that's just what happens. Or well, how long have you been married? Well, that's what happens when you've been married that long, you know. I mean, they just brush it off. It's amazing to me the types of things that have been told to women that want to just brush them off by the medical professions, you
Yeah.
know, and giving them the time of day to understand what they're communicating. And maybe it's because they don't really know what to say or what to check or what can be done to help them. You know, so again, if they run into the wrong person, it can be very detrimental to their overall like self-esteem and their sense of being a well and a whole person. And yes, that when that happens, it interferes with every relationship that's in their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so, you know, in a lot of ways, what we're doing is just, you know, you know, people to, hey, you know, you saved my life, you saved my marriage, you know, you saved me. I'm grateful because I feel myself again. You know, so when people communicate in that way, you know, they were in a different state, like you said, Linda. It's like they were in a different state, but unless you're intentional about helping, then they remain there. And
Yeah.
I'm happy that the conversations are starting to pick up a little bit. I think people are being more free to
Mhm.
talk these days.
Yeah.
It was way more hush hush. I mean, it still is to a degree, but I believe that that lid is kind of cracking open. Would you agree?
Yeah.
There's more conversation is starting, and even with the social media, I mean, there's a lot more people like looking and seeing like, oh wow, they're listening to people that like, that's me,
Yeah.
let me go find somebody that can help me.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of, and as you were, alluding to about the whole sick care program, and I don't even like to call it a healthcare system because it's a sick care system. And I don't know if it's care because you continue to,
care
uh,
is hard to say.
yeah, you just continue, you will have a patient, you will have a client for life, patient for life, you know, prescription for life. And I know that most, unfortunately, a lot of doctors now, I don't partake in any insurance for that reason. And that's what I tell patients. I'm like, I'm not going to let someone dictate how to take care of you.
Right.
Now, you were saying, Dr. Lucinda, you had, you
Mm.
know, you take your time, you know, with your patient now, and it is a concierge type of a practice where it's out of pocket, but I believe that that also puts responsibility on the patient, because a lot of times our systems have trained people to, hey, go do the $10 copay, hey, go do the $20 copay. And God forbid if you tell them they have to pay out of pocket because, you know, their insurance won't cover it, you know, they get pissed off at you. And I'm like, well, your insurance doesn't pay for a flat tire on your car or an oil change on your car, you know? And so what do you tell them with Dr. Lucinda? Because right out of naturopathic school, were you involved with insurance
Oh
or?
yeah, or I was in insurance for at least 15 years on my practice.
You were rushing a lot.
Well, yes, that, and they paid us poorly, of course.
Yeah.
And we just, it didn't really constitute, it wasn't fair at all. So anyhow, so, but as far as going off insurance, yeah, I have more time for my patients. I don't have to follow what insurance usually dictates exactly how you practice, what to do. When you go off insurance, you have a bigger scope of practice, period, right? And yes, you have more time for your patients. You don't have to do the 10-minute insurance thing anymore. But I think it's really important to be there for your patient and listen to them. And I do think that I'm just going to be outside. I'm just going to tell it like it is. I think that it definitely makes a big difference when you're a female seeing female patients. There's no doubt about it. I've
Yeah.
seen it everywhere. I constantly get barraged with that one, and I do believe it. I see it. So I think it's because we're in female bodies, and by the time you're 50, 60, you have been through what they've already been through, and we've seen it all. So and plus we're a little bit more empathic in general.
Right.
So I think that I have to say that um, um, I just love being a female practitioner and being available for my patients and listening to a patient and just listening to them and not trying to you know ahead of time uh, insert something, and just
Right.
listening to them is usually 75% of what they need for their healing anyway. And then the other 25% is the little stuff, and then they love you forever, and then they send you people, and how
Mhm.
it goes, you know.
Yeah, and that's like the key, what you said is like, they want a doctor that's going to listen to them, and the traditional medical system does not allow, as I mentioned, and or maybe I, I didn't mention it this time because I just did a webinar, but I said doctors get paid to do procedures. They don't get paid to listen to you or to think.
Mhm.
To think and try to figure out what is going on with, you know, Betty over here. They
Mhm.
don't get paid to think, to figure out what and investigate when you're in an insurance model. And that is what people need to understand. And it's like, and I kind of joke about it. I'm like, hey, do you want a Walmart doctor or a Nordstrom's doctor? I said, I'm not a doctor,
I
honey.
love that.
You
I
know,
really
but I
like
said, but we got to, you know, and when we start going through that change, and, you know, especially perimenopause, I mean, what do you tell women, like, when they come in, it's like, my gosh, what's happening, you know, during perimenopause? Because women don't even sometimes understand what menopause is or what perimenopause is or postmenopause. They kind of just, oh, I'm going through menopause. And
Right. Right.
that's not the correct term. So how would, you know, you know, like for you all to kind of share a little bit about that, and, you know, and what would you, um, you know, as a woman is going through perimenopause or is in menopause and in postmenopause, talk a little bit about that. You know, do you test women during that time?
If you don't mind, I think I'll go ahead first because my battery's getting really low and I'm really worried that you're not going to see me soon. So I'll be kind of quick. But oh my gosh. So absolutely, they are confused because you're right. They've already been to someone that has told them that there's really nothing. It's normal. There's nothing we can do about it, so on and so forth. And yet when they come to us, they're like, oh my gosh, my doctor didn't tell me my thyroid was low. My doctor didn't tell me that. I had no idea. What you're telling me is completely different from
Right.
what they said. They had no idea they could get the support, you know. And so, and then of course I usually end up explaining what they're going through. It's common. Premenopause is really common. So since premenopause is so common, that's the biggie. That's when women have all that estrogen dominance that's creeping up on them, and they're going crazy. They want to kill everybody, you know, and they're not really menopausal at all at that point. They're just high estrogen and low progesterone. You just help. What I do, I don't commonly, well, I don't need to do testing so much unless I'm really confused about where they're at. I might do an FSH and look at their thyroid, but if they're still having cycles, I certainly don't really have to do too much. I like I said, I'll look at their thyroid and look at their FSH, see where they're at. Their FSH is usually pretty low still. So, but you know, depending on what they're presenting with, if they're upset, irritable, breast tenderness, bloating, weight gain, all that, and then weird cycles, dysmenorrhea or DUBs, I will commonly just work on their liver, give them thyroid, and of course progesterone, everybody's best friend. That's kind of in a nutshell what I do. And then if of course if I look at their FSH and they're high, then you have to start asking them questions. I am extremely personalized in my practice. Everybody is so different. I don't jump to conclusions at all, but I start with blood work because it's cheap, easy to get. And I don't need much blood work, but I like to look at the thyroid, free T4, free T3, TPOs like Linda does, TSH and FSH and C. And then I'm not going to bother with an estrogen because that's going to be all over the place. And that's kind of where I start. I honestly, I rarely have to do all these expensive tests like the Dutch test. I rarely even start there. I'd never ever need to. But anyways, yes, a patient can be complicated with their adrenals and such, but that's kind of like what I do. And then if they're then I'll go on from there. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty similar. I think when people are at that phase, you know, it's also like I kind of tell people like, you know, you're also coming to like a wake up call time in your life because so many other things can be going on. So I agree. I'm not necessarily going to do a lot of, you know, I'm not testing estrogen and project, but I mean, I might check vitamins because people come in, have a lot of symptoms. Now we kind of like I said, if it smells like, if it, you know, walks like, you know, like progesterone. I tell people all the time, progesterone is the thing that hits first, you know, progesterone decline, you know, testosterone decline. So I will check, you know, like maybe their testosterone, their DHEA level. I'll also look at vitamins because people sometimes don't even know that they're vitamin deficient or vitamin B12 deficient. I'm going to do the full thyroid panel. People don't even know they're pre-diabetic. You know, there's so many metabolic changes that they're going through at this phase in their life because they've never gotten tested for things. So even though they may be coming for like, hey, I'm at this stage, I'm checking other things. And I may never do anything hormonal. It may be like, look, your metabolic state needs to be corrected. Your vitamin deficiencies need to be corrected. You know, you need to sleep better. You need to, you know, oh, you do have autoimmune thyroiditis. Did you realize that you have? I think all of us, it's amazing how many people are walking around with autoimmune conditions and inflammation in their body, and they don't even know it. And it's affecting everything else in their body. And so we're looking at, like you said, correcting those inflammatory states and correcting some of those lab and vitamin deficiencies and metabolic states and things like that. And sometimes even just doing that alone helps them to kind of carry them until like, okay, yeah, now things are really, because it's the same kind of time in their life where other things are happening and they don't even realize it. So I do like to do a comprehensive testing, but again, I'm not necessarily looking at estrogen and, you know, it's very in that perimenopause. If they're still cycling, like, you know, like Dr. Lucinda, you know, their estrogen is all over the place. So, but if they need progesterone because, hey, you're very symptomatic of progesterone deficiency symptoms, then yeah, we can say, hey, let's do this, but then also correcting the other things that may be off base as well. So.
Yeah. And I always think that also, it's like, I always tell ladies, progesterone's usually, she's the bestie. She's the, she's the sidekick of, like, I call estrogen the queen. I'm like, she is the queen and she is in everybody's business. So when she starts to decline, I said, she can't be at all the parties telling you, you do this, you do that, you do this. I said, and it gets chaotic. I said, that's how I describe queen estrogen. I said, and then progesterone, I said, she's the bestie. She's kind of like, she's like, calm down, sweetie, calm down, bring it down a notch, but
That's
she's
good.
the one that disappears first. I said, and then
Right.
testosterone comes in and kind of like, hey, let's amp up this party, So it's really like when you start explaining it to them, they're like, oh, they get it. They're like, yeah, my queen is like, she's declining. So I'm like, yeah, like you all were saying, but a lot of them don't know about that. So, and what do you get an kind of like I don't know, people just, when you say, well, you might need, you suggest having a conversation about hormone replacement, because there's so much controversy, especially after the NIH study about, well, hormones cause cancer and they have all these problems and they had to stop the study. And of course, we all know by now that the study was not, it was set up from the get-go to fail, with the how they ran it and everything. But a lot of women are still afraid of that. And if you even go to a doctor, I have patients that will go to a doctor and they won't even have the conversation with them. So what would you, how do you have that conversation? Because like I said, I was talking to Dr. Lucinda before we went on about how I was doing a webinar and a woman said, she goes, well, why would I put that in my body if it's not, why would I put that in my body yet they're eating all this other crap or putting makeup that's toxic or, getting their nails or whatever, all the other stuff that we women do so that the outside of the house looks decent, or even our homes at times, are there's a lot of toxins, everything, there's these off-gassiness happening. So how do you have the conversation with women that are kind of like staunch, like, no, 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 no?
Well, if they're staunch, no, 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 I don't really bother because I don't want to oppose them. I don't believe resistance. I don't feel like resisting something that's a resistant, but if they're fairly open, well, they'll come in and they'll say, well, my doctor told me I cannot do any hormones. Or, I have breast cancer in my family. I can't do any, and yet their bones are falling apart. They're basically aging like crazy because they're not doing anything. And I'm like, okay, let's try to clear up some misconceptions here. A lot of that's based on fear. A lot of it's based on that if they're talking about that silly test from however long ago, 12 years ago, whatever, it was so, oh my God, what a disgusting test. I was so upset when that happened. I actually got to do a talk on NPR to oppose it and gave a natural view of it. So basically the explanation is you cannot use synthetic progestins.
Right.
And you're you're putting poison and you're not able to oppose the estrogen. So why, of course, you're going to get cancer, so that's why they cut the study short. I believe that was the biggest reason. And so that's when they started saying, oh, just use estrogen alone. You can't use it with progesterone because it'll kill you. So then people started coming in my practice 10, 15 years ago saying, oh my God, I can do estrogen, but don't give me any progesterone. And then of course it takes me 20 minutes to explain to them that natural progesterone is not the progestin that they were using in the study. So I explained with the little receptor idea, okay, your natural progesterone from yams and plants or your own body's endogenous form of it will go into your receptor site and it makes everything work just hunky-dory and perfect. It makes the estrogen work fine and it stops the opposite. It stops estrogen dominance. So it's really important. But if you use a synthetic, you're not going to have the same effect. You're going to have a nothing effect. The progestin does not go into the receptor site, and therefore it basically is just poisoning you and turning into progestin and causing even more estrogen dominance. So of course you're going to get problems with that. So once you give that explanation, the women that are more literate, they kind of, it's like, okay, I get it.
They start to get it. Yeah, they start to understand, but I think it's just having a conversation because it's
Oh,
almost like
yeah.
a one-sided conversation, but it's like, no, let me just share this about you, then make the decision. Dr. Lita, what do you do with women because with women that come in, you see women of all ages, but do you find that sometimes women say, well, it's been like, there's this whole thing about a 10-year time period, right? It's like, well, you know what? You missed the boat on that. You can't do any hormones. You're at risk. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't feel, I mean, there's actually some recent thing that said, I mean, certainly the whole 10-year thing was because of the old study. They kind of said, okay, within. So that's where that 10-year mark came in. But now there's recent studies that have shown that you can go beyond 10 years and be just fine, which we knew already, but it's just the studies are finally kind of catching up. The conversations are catching up. So I do tell people that, hey, it's okay. You can start. I'm just gentle with the start, because I'm not necessarily trying to like bombard them. I already know that everything is declined, everything is gone. So I'm also looking at, okay, what do you hope to achieve, with this? Is it that you want to start after 10 years because you're still symptomatic? Or is it that you're starting because you've been reading more and you've been hearing more about health benefits and things like that? We do know that the benefits do occur when people start closer to that transition. So it's better to start closer to the transition. Okay, so it's better to have that cardiovascular protection, cognitive function, your bones, your bladder, your vagina. It's important to have that and the earlier time with the transition. And of course, going past 10 years is no big deal. But if they've gone like a whole 10-year gap of nothing, then I'm really wanting to find out, okay, what is it that you hope to achieve with this? Are you still symptomatic? Because yeah, there are some people that have been told, well, just keep hanging in there and everything's going to get better. And they're still dealing with stuff. So I am going to go gentler because their body has been not exposed to anything for so many years. And I have had patients where I start them maybe on a very low dose just to get something in their system to kind of boost it. And you'll be surprised at how, when you've been depleted for so long, how even just a little bit of a change can make a difference with the way you feel. So I still do. I just am a little bit more gentler because someone who's closer to that transition, they may be more, highly symptomatic, if I could put that, stronger symptoms. And they're also looking for long-term benefits. So, we're trying to kind of do things, but I'm not going to, say, nope, sorry, it's too late. Just suffer the rest of they may be 70 years old. They may be, 65.
Yeah.
They may be 60. They still got life to live.
Well, that's the thing right there too, because a lot of doctors don't know, aren't educated in this, and it's just like, wow. So imagine like our thyroid needs to someone that had a thyroidectomy. It's like, what, you don't give them thyroid hormones and they have to suffer for the rest of their life. And I kind of try to equate that. Well, the same thing with estrogen. It's like our ovaries aren't making estrogen. You have other parts of the body that will make it, but they're not not to the extent of what, ovaries do. So what do you, there's probably, would you find that there is maybe a person that wouldn't be a candidate for HRT?
Well, I think the thing, a lot of it is just depending on like if they're willing to even use it the way it needs to be used. Okay. If I have somebody who's got like, and I always do transdermal. I don't do oral forms of estrogen anyway. So I was going to say, certainly there's some people that are like on blood thinners or have had, DVTs, other types of clotting, abnormalities. So I don't do oral because oral has to be metabolized through the liver. And so I don't do that anyways. I mean, literally, I think I may have, out of the hundreds of patients, I have like maybe less than a handful of patients who want oral estrogen. That's just because that's the way they want to. If they're going to use something, they say, I want a pill form. I don't want a cream. I don't want a patch. I don't want pellets. I want a pill. And I tell them, I just educate them and say, the reason why I prefer not to go this route is because of XYZ, but this is certainly your body. And, I'm willing to support you with this, with you understanding what those risks are. So for the most part, I have women that have breast cancer that's on estrogen.
Yeah.
So so I think it's really the conversation and letting them understand, pluses and minuses, to the route of delivery, how it may benefit them, finding out what is it that they hope to accomplish with it. And we work together. Like I said, we're partners. I'm helping to support you with your decision, and I'm going to monitor. I'm going to also be checking and making sure that whatever things we need to monitor with you are being monitored.
Yeah, that's where the personalized care, as you were saying, Dr. Lucinda, that's where you've learned so much from your patients. Your patients have been your greatest teachers, and that's why it's called a practice.
That's so true.
So it is a practice. Now, do you find that, um, when you have that conversation with some of your patients, is there a patient that you wouldn't prescribe it to?
Well, like I said, every patient's different, and I have quite a few cancer patients in my practice. So of course, if we even get to that, the biggest thing is chemo usually totally destroys their ovaries. And so if they're 30s, 40s, or even early 50s, that's a complaint. Their hair is a complaint, their skin's a complaint. They just age so quickly after that, such severe oxidative medication they were on. So it really depends on them. But what I'm pretty holistic about making sure their thyroid's good on everybody, because if you don't have enough optimal thyroid, as you know, the receptor won't even work to accept estrogen, and it controls estrogen. So after you've had a chronic illness, any chronic illness, definitely cancer, and you have total hormone depletion, devastation, your ovaries are gone, everything. I am a huge believer in bioidentical, so I have no problem giving them a transdermal like she does. I believe in transdermals mostly. So they can avert the liver. I think that's the bypass is very important. Portal bypass. So it really depends. I like if someone's got vaginal dryness to apply the like a bias, like a biestrogen 2.5 or so to the labia. I think it's helpful it's an amazing thing, helps their bladder, helps everything. And progesterone, I have no problem using progesterone. They can't sleep at night, etc. No, those people, they really need their bioidentical hormones. So I have no problem. And I can't really think of anyone that I would not give bioidenticals to. I'm sure there's always a case, but it's more like
it's a
I'm
case.
prioritizing. Right. It's like, okay, right now we have to do this.
Yeah.
But we're definitely going to get to your hormones and balance all your hormones and optimize them. I'm a big anti-aging doctor. I'm huge into biologically optimizing. I'm very much a biohacker too. So I'm like, I don't believe what any of those MDs are saying about not giving anybody hormones. Women especially, no, I'm not in. I'm more
one of the things, I think hormones are definitely that thing that I'm just a true believer. I know we're coming up on time because we all got patients to do, but kind of just some real basics that I would always say, even if a person chooses not to, just at this point, because they're not educated enough, I always say make an educated decision. So there's still the foundational things that every single woman should do. I always say you've got to get your nutrition dialed in. I just said remove all the processed foods. Build your meals around protein. Make sure you're having your vegetables, your healthy fats, colorful, 25, 30 grams of fiber a day, lots of water. That's basic. Everybody could do that, regardless if you choose to do HRT or not. It's just going to make the HRT work better. That's my belief. And then the stress is huge. Stress management. There's so many different strategies. If it means you go out and do breath work, it means going to the gym and walking, whatever, nature therapy. Manage your stress, manage your sleep, but that's where progesterone comes in. I love progesterone with it. My sleep is amazing because you got to get your sleep dialed in, and then the other thing, I always believe also is, You do have your base of certain supplements like your vitamin D, like magnesium, you know, different type of probiotics, are in fish oils as well. And, you know, if you, that's a really good base, and yeah, get those hormones in. We can have, we're gonna have to do this another time about, some of the systems of the delivery systems that work, how they work, because a lot of people do have questions about that. Well, why should I do a patch? Why should I do a cream? Why should I do an injection? Or why should be a troche? What are the pros and cons of that and how they work in the body? Because a lot of women do not even know that. So, ladies, thank you, docs. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna call you all the menopause squad. That is it.
Welcome.
So,
It was fun.
Thank you for making this happen.
ladies, all right, have an amazing rest of your day.
It's
Go save some
Pleasure meeting
lives.
you, okay, Dr. Lucinda, it's a pleasure meeting you.
Nice meeting you.
All
Bye.
right.
Bye,
Yep.
ladies.
Fun.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye now.
Bye.